And God had already gone before me, that the timing of things, right? The time that this job would come open, the time that I was in my life. And
Mm-hmm.
like I wasn't in any relationship. There was no barriers really. Like every
Yeah.
barrier that I put up was me putting it up, and God coming back and saying, no, that's not in the way either. So
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
the only thing in your way is you. So, but I took that risk, believing that if it wasn't the right thing, I always do this too. I always say, God, if that's not for me, don't make it so. Like I
Mm.
don't even want to,
Yeah.
at some point, let something go wrong, right? At some point, let something pop up that's like, yeah, no, we decided to go a
Yeah.
different direction, or the job's on hold. So I would always in these positions say, if that's not for me, God, make it clear that's not for me.
Hey, hey, everyone. Let's start healing. I'm Adrianne Murchison, and welcome to episode 77 of the Let's Start Healing podcast. We have more in common than we think, and what we have in common can change the world. It's 2022. And many of you may be like me and said a bittersweet goodbye to 2021. It was a challenging year. It was a year of blessings. Saying goodbye to 2021 was another acknowledgement of people we lost in 2021. So bittersweet, but I'm looking forward to 2022, and I'm going to tell you about the first guest of the year in just a moment. First, I'd like you to let me know if you tend to kick off your year with not necessarily resolutions, but a particular focus. Some people start off the year with a word for the year. I definitely try to do a reset at the start of each year, and I'll tell you, I tried to start my reset maybe a few days before Christmas, maybe the week before Christmas. I really tried to get back into the groove of working out and getting some of the agita, I call it, out of my system. And that hasn't totally worked. And just a few days before the new year, a thought came to my mind about my friend Jazz Jones of Mad Miracles, who's been on the podcast several times. I thought about some videos that she has on her Mad Miracles Facebook page. And her videos are breathing and energy healing videos that she does with Kevin Coe, who is an energy healer in Los Angeles. Soul Body LA is Kevin Coe's business. Jazz is based in Roswell, Georgia. And they have these videos where they're doing breathing and they're doing energy clearing. They've been doing this for about a year and a half. And I decided I was going to go back and I was going to look at one of those videos and I was going to go through an exercise. And I found one right away that was the right one for me. And it's been great. I have been doing this video. It's a 34-minute video is the one that I chose. And I have been doing it for 5 days. And it has been wonderful. And basically, Jazz takes you through breathing, deep breathing, connecting with your inner self, connecting with each of your energy centers known as chakras. I'll tell you something else as a side note. Jazz had lost all this weight, not that she needed to because she didn't, but she had lost all this weight early in the pandemic. And me and many of her friends were like, "What in the world did you do? Oh my God. What did you do to get yourself in this perfect looking shape?" And she said it was her breathing exercises. And I get it because as I'm doing these deep breaths, and I'm doing some of the movements, which is nothing strenuous. But if you're not used to breathing deeply, like I'm not used to breathing deeply, you are working inner muscles that you might not normally work. At least I was. So, in me doing these exercises every day, when I say exercises, I mean these movements and meditating and focusing as we're moving, going through each chakra basically. She starts off with connecting with our energy and then bringing new energy through movements into our energy centers. Starting from our root chakra, she goes through each one. Each one has a word associated to it. Safe, creative, as we move up our bodies to the top of our energy centers. So, safe, creative, strength, and will for our solar plexus, love for our heart, expressive for our throat chakra. And then we move up into being connected with our third eye, divine and open. It's a fast 30 minutes. And at the same time, I feel so connected to my inner self when it's over. I'm only telling you a piece of it that she and Kevin take you through. So that unlocked something and got in touch with the agita, the angst or something that I was feeling inside, and has helped me to release some energy that I wanted to let go of. And in my meditations, I came up with 4 words. Some of them are words that came to me through God in my meditation, and some came to me through my own mind that I'm focusing on for the year. And so I'm going to share them with you. So, freedom in limitlessness is one focus, healing, becoming, and love. Being open to give love and to receive love, which I try to always be in that mindset. But as I always say, God is love. So I love to incorporate God in whatever my intentional focus is. So moving on to our guest today, Monica Richardson. I've known Monica for quite a while because she was a senior managing editor at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, where I work. And at one time, years and years ago, she was my boss and quite an inspiration. I learned so much from her. She is now executive editor at the Miami Herald. She's been at the Miami Herald for a year. In addition to executive editor of the Miami Herald, she is also executive editor of the El Nuevo Herald and the Bradenton Herald. She is the first Black executive editor in the Miami Herald's 118-year history. And let me tell you something, she is a busy woman. I'm so grateful that she took the time to join us on Let's Start Healing. As long as I have known Monica, I have always been aware of how true she is to her faith. In 2014, she adopted a beautiful little girl, and she's been very open in sharing the journey that brought her and her daughter Lyric together. And so she's going to share some of that with us and just how she goes about staying connected to her faith and her spirituality in her daily life, through challenges, and also through new opportunities. I'm going to tell you, when Monica was leaving the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, there was a Zoom going away party for her, and everyone got to share how they felt about her. And it was just so inspiring how she described her decision to leave that position and to go to the Miami Herald because she was courted. They approached her about that position, and it struck me how she said it was sort of an effortless process. She just let the process in terms of the courtship of the newspaper and getting her to come on board, she just let it flow with the mindset that if it feels right, she'll just keep going with it. If it feels right, she'll just continue with the next step in the process. She just decided that she was going to trust God and trust herself. And I just thought that was very, very powerful. And so we are going to meet her in just a moment. Before we do, I want to ask you to subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. Share it with your friends. Let them know that we are available on traditional platforms that include Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. So let's get started. Let's meet Monica and let's start healing. Welcome, Monica.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So good to see you.
It's great to see you. I have to tell you, I miss you, even though I didn't see you that much.
I know. I miss Atlanta a lot. I miss Atlanta a whole lot.
I know you are missed big time, but I know everybody keeps up with you on social media, and you've been extremely busy in the months you've been away.
Right.
As I mentioned to you offline, as long as I've known you, the number of years that I've known you, I know you to be a person who has a very strong relationship with God.
Right.
And I know it's a general question, but is there a way that you can characterize your faith and your relationship with God and how that keeps you grounded?
Sure. So first, I guess the first thing that comes to mind is I couldn't imagine life without it. Like I couldn't imagine life without it, period.
Right.
I can't even say for you the moment I knew that I am a child of God. It's always been there. There's no option like for me. There's no, let me think about this. Or I do remember the moment as a teenager that I was overwhelmed with something I couldn't describe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I went through the process of formally joining a church home, a church body.
Yeah.
But even then, I remember at that moment, I had an aunt who was a dear aunt to me, much more like a grandmother than an aunt. And I remember saying to her, I don't know why I'm crying. And she said, oh, baby. I remember she said, oh, baby, I know why you're crying. It's so a part of me that I don't know what it looks like to not be in that walk.
Yeah.
And everything that I do, I'm guided by. Now, I'm by no means someone who, like, I right now feel like I'm not in the place I want to be in my walk. And COVID has had a little bit of a part of that because it's changed what was my practices, if you will, right? My Wednesday night go to Bible study and my Sunday morning church service. And so I've had to be very introspective, much more introspective about my walk. But I couldn't imagine life as any other way. And when I have moments of doubt and moments of question and moments of fear, my rest and my peace, I know, even in anxiety, right? I feel like a small moment to say, okay, God, or say nothing even.
Right.
I know that the voice that I hear inside of me about any decision that I make in life, whether it's a professional decision, a personal decision, a decision as a mother, a decision with my finances, like everything is, when I hear the do that, Monica, or the don't do that, Monica, that is my guide in my walk with God telling me which direction to go. And I think it's interesting because sometimes we have, we have that free will, right? To make a decision. I'm not going to do that. Or just do something else, and then the guilt like hangs with me. But I could not imagine life, going through life any other way, really.
You know, it's funny when you mention that voice, because I think recently for me, I've realized that voice is do this, do that. Because I think that I used to think it was something that I would be contemplating.
Right.
That's me. That's me. But, when it's just an instantaneous, Adrianne, do this.
Yes, exactly. Right. Like you didn't sit down and have like prayer, right? And say, okay, now what am I, right? It wasn't that kind of moment, but I could be in my car. I could be sitting at my desk. Anywhere that I am, I know that voice is, particularly if it's around a decision. And what's great about it is it's anything in life. Like anything, the smallest of things or the largest of decisions that we have to make. I feel like God is with me, and I couldn't imagine it any other way.
Wow. And so when you decided that you were going to, or you were in the process, you were being courted by the Miami Herald to come and be their executive editor. And that had to be a big decision for you because you had been at the AJC so long.
Right.
And, obviously everyone loves you there and you were so great at what you were doing. You mentioned that you decided to just let go of control And what was that like? Was
Right.
that hard? I mean, how did you get to even that decision?
Well, I say this all the time about my life, that I feel like, professionally speaking, especially, that I am a chess piece on God's puzzle, and He's moving me around, right?
Yeah.
It's not it. And my job is to keep working hard in life, just to keep doing what I do and do what I
Mm-hmm.
know. And as opportunities present themselves, you know, when you know, when you know, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
every barrier that I put up, every question I said, oh, I can't do that because an answer would show up, right?
Uh-huh.
I can't do that because my lease is not up for a year. Well, no, actually, your lease is going to be ending fine, and you can get out of the lease. It's no problem. And oh, by the way, they'll cover the cost of the lease. Okay. Oh, I can't do that because Lyric is in the middle of a school year. She just started a new school. She's doing great. Why would I disrupt her life like that? And Lyric says, oh, I'd love to go to Florida. You know, and
Uh-huh.
it's like every little barrier, whether it was a
Mm.
decision I had to make about my circumstances personally, or, I was, at a good place professionally speaking. I wasn't looking for a job. And so, but I remember, the other thing was, I thought, why would I, like, this is a risk, right? I mean, we're talking about a company who just came out of bankruptcy, and
Mm-hmm.
I was comfortable. And I
Mm-hmm.
think of realizing that, like, as I was like over here, God was already there in Miami, here in Miami,
Mm-hmm.
making things had already been set up. That's the other thing I would say, is the way that He goes before us is like, you have to walk in, you have to take the
Wow.
step, right? Like, He's already made the footprint in front of you. So you just need to make the next
Mm.
step. And
Mm-hmm.
so I honestly feel like He had already gone before me in this. I had many years ago met the editor of the paper. So I knew her
Mm-hmm.
through interesting relationships that I had. I had friends here in the company that I work for who, the relationship had already been, the path had already been laid out essentially. It wasn't
Yeah.
like I had to take steps to prepare for it. I had
Yeah.
already done that work, and the work that I was doing, and God had already gone before me, that the timing of things, right? The time that this job would come open, the time that I was in my life. And
Mm-hmm.
like, I wasn't in any relationship. There was no barriers really. Like, every
Yeah.
barrier that I put up was me putting it up, and God coming back and saying, no, that's not in the way either. So
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
the only thing in your way is you. So, but I took that risk, believing that if it wasn't the right thing, I always do this too. I always say, God, if that's not for me, don't make it so. Like,
Mm.
I don't even want to,
Yeah.
at some point, let something go wrong, right? At some point, let something pop up that's like, yeah, no, we decided to go a
Yeah.
different direction, or the job's on hold. So I would always in these positions say, if that's not for me, God, make it clear that's not for me, even if I
Right.
wanted it so bad, right? And the interesting thing about it is, I had another opportunity that I was considering that I really wanted. Like, I really wanted it bad.
Yeah.
And that opportunity didn't pan out. And so I thought, okay, it's okay. I'm comfortable. I'm good. And then
Mm-hmm.
I realized later, right, that God, that wasn't for me. This was for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
I go back to what I said earlier, is what I'm a chess piece on God's puzzle, and He
Yeah.
moves me around. And my job is to sometimes sit still, and sometimes be ready to go, and sometimes be ready to king myself, get ready for that king move. And this was a
Yeah.
king move.
I love how you said, I know you said footprints, but I love how you said he was already in Florida. He had already laid it out for
Right,
you in
right,
Florida.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as you were talking, I was just thinking that, I mean, I can only imagine all the balls that you must have in the air that you are juggling at any point in time. And everybody during this pandemic, not everyone, but a lot of people are just moving at a really quick pace, a
Right.
faster pace than they want to be at. And so how do you keep your balance? How do you stay grounded spiritually? And not that, I'm not trying to say that you're 100% perfect at it
Right.
or
Right.
anything like that, but how do you go about trying to maintain a balance? You had a birthday
Right.
recently, and
Yeah.
I saw you mention on social media that you worked.
Right.
And so how do you maintain that balance?
So, from a spiritual standpoint, I actually have it here. I have two things that I do. So I have my daily strength for women. It's a yearly devotional. And then I have something that somebody recommended to me called Sister and Sister. It's a 21-day devotional you didn't know you needed. And
Wow.
so that is a part of my what's my word for today? Like, where do I need to be? What do I need to remember? And often it's interesting because every day I'm like, oh yeah, that was for me today. That was for me today.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And try to go back to it and remember, okay, what did you start your day with? What's that word that you started your day with? Commitment
Yeah.
is the word today, right? And so I try to stay grounded through that. I'm a huge believer of self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Like, nobody is tougher on me than I am on myself. Nobody is going to know, well, you should have done that. Well, I knew I should have done that. Like, the self-awareness I believe I have is pretty deep, actually. And so that keeps me grounded because I remind myself often. And it's interesting because people will tell me I'm going through counseling right now, and my counselor will say I need to allow myself some grace. Like, the number of times people will say I need to allow myself grace is,
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I know I do, but I also got to get better at this. I need to be better at this. I need to spend more time with God. I need to pick up my Bible more. I need to, right? Fill in the blank.
Right.
I really have a practice of self-awareness that keeps me grounded. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have balance. I won't say that I have that balance that I wish I had. I would find it hard to believe anybody actually has. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but it works for me, right? The balance
Yeah.
that I have, I know the deficit. I know the deficit I have in my balance, and
Yeah.
I know that if I really worked at it, I can change it.
Yeah.
But the self-awareness and sort of practices I have of taking a moment when I realize, for instance, that it's going to be a day where I might say a few more curse words than I normally would. That's probably a day, Monica, that you need to just call. That's a mental health day, right? Just don't
Yeah.
go because something's going to happen and you're going to lose it. And like, that kind of self-awareness keeps me grounded.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Realizing that I have a 9-year-old watching everything I say and everything I do keeps me grounded. And just realizing at the end of the day, all I can do is like be in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have people around me who spend a lot of time thinking about what's next and what the future looks like. Even my boss the other day asked me, like, what's next? I'm like, I'm 10 months in, like, I don't know what's next. I've never been one of those people that, well, actually, very young in life I was, but now even more so. I don't think about what's next. I'm thinking about how can I get the most out of this moment. Like, I'm in this moment
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
I'm not going to worry about tomorrow. I'm not going to worry
Mm-hmm.
about next week because that's going to come if it's supposed to come.
Yeah.
And there's nothing I can do. So that self-awareness and practice of being in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
and knowing my own thoughts and habits and feelings, I guess you could
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. Not being present is probably like my biggest downfall, I would think.
Hmm.
And so I do try to do that, but then I forget
Right.
sometimes.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Lyric, who's 9. And would you share as much as you feel comfortable about the journey of the two of you and your
Yeah,
beautiful mother-daughter relationship?
for sure. So it actually goes back to, I took a trip to Kenya, to Nairobi,
Mhm.
for it was actually related to work. It was kind of a fellowship, a reporting fellowship that I was doing. And I was there for 2 weeks, and we got to experience like the political side and the social side. And I saw poverty that I had never seen before. Like, I saw it on TV,
Mhm.
but I had never experienced that kind
What
of
year was
poverty.
this?
This would have been in 2008, 2009. And I just never seen that kind of poverty before. I
Yeah.
mean, children whose bathrooms were dirt huts, literally, but they were so happy.
Yeah.
And at one point during the trip, we went to a soccer field where little children are running around with, and we also visited some schoolhouses, not like the schoolhouses we know, right? These were wooden tables, and lunchtime was a bowl of something. And there was a little girl there who I actually have her picture on my wall in my office. Who, can I step away and get it for you? Because it's literally right here. Let me get it.
Oh, yeah.
So this little girl, she, and this is us at one of the campgrounds. She wouldn't leave me. She wouldn't leave my side. Like, she followed me everywhere. And if I could have put that little girl in my backpack and took her home, like in my suitcase, and brought her right back home with me, I would have. Like, I had these moments where I just wanted to bring all of the children back, because I was, they play soccer with no shoes. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not trying to exaggerate it. This was their life, and there was nothing wrong with it. But to me, I was like, there's so much richness back home.
Right.
Like, I couldn't justify the feeling of, I was just here for a moment on this trip to observe, but this was their life. And they were happy about it, but I felt like I needed to do something. So when I got back, after a while, I started thinking, okay, I wanted to bring all the babies back with me. I couldn't. So I'm gonna think about adoption, international adoption. And I quickly realized then I couldn't afford it. It was like tens of thousands of dollars if I had gone through the process that way.
Yeah.
And so I stopped that journey, literally stopped it. And then one day, a few years later, I was a member in Atlanta of Cascade United Methodist Church, and I was an usher. And I remember the Sunday I was ushering, and it was Adoption Sunday. It was Adoption Day, and I didn't know it was Adoption Day ahead of time.
How long was this after your trip?
Several years later. So this probably would have been maybe 4 or 5 years later. And they did an altar call. They said, if you've ever thought about adoption, if you might be whatever, if you've ever, had this thinking, or if you're interested in adoption, come down to the altar and just do the prayer. And I turned to without even thinking, I didn't go back to this moment and say, oh, I remember that moment I went to Africa and I thought I wanted to adopt. I was moved. This is why I say this was God led. Literally moved before I could. I was outside of myself and said to the other usher, because she often reminded me of this moment, I got to go. I was on the door. I was upstairs, and I said to her, I got to go. Can you take my spot? And I went downstairs for the altar call. And then after church service, they said, we have agencies downstairs, all kinds of agencies where you can get information. So I went downstairs and, thought, okay, well, I'll just walk around. And I landed at a table for Families First, which is based in Atlanta. And I met a woman who said, I was just like, I'm single. They probably wouldn't let me adopt. And I was like, but, I might think about, and she said, come to this meeting next week. So I went to the meeting, and it was a foster care meeting about being a foster parent. And I thought, well, maybe I could do that, right? I'm not, as a reporter, you're like, do you have time for that? And do I have resources for that? That set in motion my adoption process. And so Lyric is adopted, and she was in foster care in Houston, Texas. When I started my journey that day in church, Lyric had not yet been born.
Wow. Did you foster first, or did you?
I did not foster first, because they wanted me to foster first. In fact, they wanted me to do foster to adopt. But the idea of becoming attached to a child, and then someone saying, oh, her mother and father, or her mother or her father family's ready for her, or he or she,
right,
they're ready to take them back. I thought I would be devastated. So I knew enough to say, no, it's not for me. I decided to pursue the adoption process. Well, as an adoptive parent, you go through parental classes. There's a ton of paperwork. I had to do like a, what they call a home study, where they come into your home, evaluate your home. They dug into my past, my parents' past, my upbringing, everything, like all of that had to be exposed. My finances, everything had to be exposed. And on top of that, I had to go through this series of classes before you even got to the step that you would become eligible to adopt. So I went through that process. My adoption process ended up taking 2 years. And when remember I said Lyric had not yet been born. When I first met Lyric, she was just about to turn 2. So I went through this process where you meet children through adoption fairs. Literally, like, you go into a room and they have pictures of children everywhere, and you wait in line to maybe meet a child. And I remember saying to my social worker, my caseworker, that's not how I want to find my child. I'm not going to walk into a room and look at a picture and sign my name on a piece of paper and be like, okay, I wonder if they're going to pick me, or am I going to, what's going to happen? It just seemed cold.
Yeah.
It seemed like that's not how I wanted to find my child. I should also say, I never had a desire to be a mother. Like, I wasn't that person that was like, oh, I want to be a mom. I want to be a mom. I want to be a mom. I was an auntie that was good.
Yeah.
I laugh about this now, but I was that single person who said, oh no, children are crumb snatchers. That is not for me. That's not my, I will take care of somebody's baby like they're my own, but that's not for me. So,
that's a pretty big point. That's amazing.
God was like working on me through this process. Like, I had to get ready for what might happen at the end of this, which I didn't know. Yeah. So about halfway through the process, they said, well, we're not sure you can do this. You work a lot. By that time, I was a manager. So I had been a manager in Atlanta. They were like, how can you're by yourself. How can you, I remember the social worker saying to me, we're not sure this is for you. By this time I had gone through the training. I'm waiting, they send you, sign up for websites. They send you pictures of children, your social workers working with you. They send you some children and say, this might be a good match for you.
Yeah.
They also tell you to be very specific. Like, if you can't take care of a child who has some kind of issue, or there's something about the child, they say, this is your time to be, because we need you to be in this, and the relationship needs to be right. So don't take the chance of saying, oh, but it's okay. It's okay if the child has disrespect. So I knew what I wanted. I wanted a little girl or a little boy who I knew I could not take more than one child. And I knew that was going to be difficult, because most of the time, I didn't want a newborn.
Did not want a newborn.
Did not want a newborn.
Which seemed that would be in your favor, because it seems like most people would.
Yeah, I didn't want diapers. I didn't want to go through that stage.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of selfish in a way, but they were like, that's what you should do. This is what we want you to do. Don't take a baby if you know you can't handle a baby.
Right.
And I knew I couldn't handle a newborn. So the woman said to me, well, you're looking for a needle in a haystack. You're looking for one little girl, because most of the time they're part of a sibling group once they get to a certain age. So I was looking for, at that time, I was looking for like 4 to 10, age 4 to 10, little boy, little girl. No siblings. I couldn't do 2. I wasn't going to do 2. I wasn't even going to try. It was not going to be fair to the child or to me. So long story short, I ended up meeting 2 little girls the same time I met Larry. And so I went to Houston, and they presented me and said, we think we found her. And they sent me her picture. And I was like, okay. So I met her in Houston. Then they sent me another picture of a little girl. And they said, there's another little girl. She was slightly older that you might be interested in. Okay. So I'm going to put that over here, because that's relevant.
Okay.
So I meet Lyric, go through the process. I meet her 2 or 3 times in Houston. She had been with the same foster mom from age 2 months to the time that I met her. The foster mom had 70 children in and out of her home the time that she had Lyric. She loved Lyric and kept her, but she knew she was too old. She said, these are her words, that she was too old to adopt her. So she was going to keep her until she had a home that she was going to allow her to go to.
Yes.
And so Lyric had a fear of dogs. I have a dog now. That's a whole part of this journey. Had a fear, extreme fear of dogs, that they wouldn't even place her in a home with a dog. I had a dog at the time. I put my dog in a rescue that rescues animals. And I had to let go of my dog even, which was like hard. Like I never want to do that. Right. I had a Dachshund, and so the Dachshund Society of Atlanta, like I did all this research and got rid of my dog, preparing to have Lyric in my life. And so Lyric and I, in July of 2014, she came to be with me, and I remember sitting on the sofa looking at her. I've been through this journey. I forgot one important part about that. Remember, I was sitting about halfway through the journey. They were saying this is not for you. I went to Dunkin' Donuts, no, Krispy Kreme. And I got a dozen donuts, and I sat in the car and I ate every single donut, and I cried. It was Mother's Day weekend. On top of that, when she had told me that on like the Thursday before Mother's Day, and I sat in my car and I ate every single one of those donuts, and I cried and I cried and I cried because I thought I had come all this way, and this woman is telling me that I can't do it.
Oh my goodness.
So I left that Krispy Kreme after sitting there and eating donut. It was raining too. I remember that. And I was at the Krispy Kreme on Cobb Parkway. And I went to Family Christian stores was still open then. And I was like, I just need to watch a movie, some kind of faith movie. I just need to get a movie. So I picked up anything, literally picked up anything out of the $5 bin. The movie, I got chills right now. The movie was about adoption, was about a woman who was trying to adopt and how there were barriers in her life. There was like all these challenges that she was up against. I don't even remember the name of the movie, but I remember that moment thinking, okay, this journey is not over. I cried through the whole movie. I couldn't believe that I had gone from that Thursday to the donuts to going into Family Christian stores and picking up a random DVD out of the $5 spot. And that was an adoption.
And not even knowing what the movie was about or anything. You just
picked it up. I was like, I need something to just make me feel better.
Yeah.
I can't even, now that I'm even sharing this story, I'm like, I can't even, it was all God.
Yeah.
It was all God. It was all God. I got sick from the donuts and had to take a week off from work, like a few days off work the next days, which made me available to the social worker who was like, there are things you need to do. So I spent that time doing whatever she asked me to do. Okay. So then life is good. I get Lyric. I'm on my journey. I take a maternity leave. I start the training that's required to do the adoption process. Once you go into the process, they don't release her for adoption immediately because like you go through this process where you're kind of a foster mom, but this is intended to be your child.
Yeah.
Lyric's parents' rights had been terminated. They were both, and that's probably make a part 2 podcast because that her birth mother's journey was interesting too. And I only know what I know on paper. She does not know her birth parents. I've never met them. But when I went through the training, I met the woman who adopted the other little girl.
Okay.
That I had two. It was Lyric and another little girl.
Right.
And I remember specifically because as we were talking about our children in the training class, I remembered this little girl's circumstances. And I said to her, I said, can I see, we were sharing pictures. I was like, can I see your little girl? And I realized that, and that made me feel so good because I was down to like, I had to make a choice. Am I going to pursue Lyric or am I going to pursue this other little girl? And I remember thinking that other little girl had some things that kept me from selecting her. But I remember having guilt that, gosh, maybe I was supposed to, like, I hope beautiful. She finds a home.
Yeah.
So it was confirmed for me in a random training session
she had
at Bethel Church there. And yeah, that she had been placed with another good mother. And so that was all part of the journey. And so now I have Lyric and she is 9. She was just turning 2 then. And it's interesting because when you're, for the state of Texas, when you're 2, you're considered a hard to place child, a special needs placement. And so that special needs placement actually afforded her some benefits that she wouldn't have gotten if I had adopted her at age 1. So it was all God's timing.
And it
Everything is
seemed
God's
like you
timing.
two, was it, I mean, I know it was an adjustment, but was it sort of seamless also? Because
It
it
was very
seemed,
seamless.
yeah.
She took to me. There was no point in which she was like, "Who are you? Why am I here? You know, I don't like you." There was none of that. It was like from day one. And they tell you when you adopt to not bring a lot of people into their lives. The same when you were a baby, a newborn, like
Mm-hmm.
you need time to, they call it
Bonding.
yeah, the bonding period of coning. There was another word for it. But so I went through that cocooning. They said you need to
Oh,
cocoon. You need to
I
like, it's
love that.
just you and her.
Mm-hmm.
So I introduced her to even family members. I just introduced her to my mom, and I went through that cocooning process. I introduced her to Cynthia Dubosa's little girl, who is now their best friends, and
Yeah.
it was her first friend in a week. Like the first week I had her, so she and Caitlin bonded, and then she kind of flourished from there. And so she has been a blessing in my life. And people always say, "Oh, you're such a blessing to her. She has no idea how blessed she is." I'm like, "No, I'm the blessed one." But
Yeah.
I always felt I had so much more to give in life. Like I didn't want to go through life feeling like there was a child who needed a home and I could have given her a home. For what reason would I say no?
Mm-hmm. There's
Um,
there's something about you that is very open, I think, for that to have happened in church where they
mhm,
make that
mhm,
announcement.
mhm.
And even when you talk about, just the process of making
Right,
decisions,
right.
there's something where you're just naturally open, I think, or willing,
Yeah,
you
I
know.
mean, it's surrendering.
Yeah.
It's that surrender. So
Yeah.
like, and even then, when I talk about being at chess piece, like I wasn't in control of that process at all. It was like
Uh-huh.
it was almost like an outer body experience. Like everything was happening
Yeah.
around me and I was watching it, but somebody
Mm-hmm.
else was watching it. And I was really in it.
Right, right, right.
From that moment with that little girl in Africa to the moment that I got
Mm-hmm.
married. And so I remember going back to the woman. So I'm still friends. I'm Facebook friends with my social worker who's not even in that business anymore.
Uh-huh.
And I remember going back to her saying, "I got my needle in the haystack." She was like, "Yeah, we got your needle in a haystack." So I'm blessed. I found the right agency. Like everything just fell, and
Yeah.
it was God had gone before me to prepare me for that moment in life, all kinds of ways. Um, and I have family members who said, like, "Why don't you do that too? You can travel, you can do what you want to do. Why do you want to be a mom right now?" And I was like, "I don't know," because I do,
Yeah,
like I do,
right, right.
because I had so much life to give.
Mm-hmm. Does she
And
know some of her journey and,
she knows it
just
all.
the,
She knows,
yeah,
her level of understanding has changed over the years, obviously, but
yeah.
yeah, she doesn't know the story of the Africa and the church movement.
Uh-huh.
But it's sometime, I'm sure we will have that conversation, but she
Yeah.
knows she's adopted. She knows, she thinks something's wrong with you if you're not. Like to her, that means, oh, I'm extra special.
Right, right.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful.
So that was a huge part, and as a professional woman and a single mom still now, it's a lot of sacrifice. A lot of sacrifice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's a sacrifice that you love,
Oh, for sure. Yes,
Yeah,
yes, definitely.
yeah. I understand. So I love you sharing that story. Thank you so much. And I have healing questions that I like
Hmm.
to ask guests that I would love to ask you. And when you talk about the voice of God, basically, what is it like when you feel God's presence? Is that anything that you can put into words or how
It
you can
is.
describe?
Yeah, it's very natural. It's very. I remember I had gone through a rough period in my life. I was married at one point, and I was going through a divorce process. And I remember somebody saying to me, "Prayer isn't something you got to set up and do. It's just a conversation with God. You just start talking to God. You just say, with I sit here now and say, God, I'm just having a conversation. You don't have to, say certain words and do certain things." And so for me, God's presence is not a, not like a go into a special room there, and there's nothing wrong with that either, right?
Right.
But for me, it's a constant presence. It's a constant, it is, I'm in my car and I'm rushing and I'm late to get somewhere and I see an accident on the road and I say, thank you, God, you made me late for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Take care of that person. But thank you, God, I was slowed down for a reason. Everything around me, everything that happens is happening because that's how God laid it out to be.
Mm-hmm.
So his presence with me is just constant. It is really constant. And I don't take that for granted. So when I go through those tough moments, I know he's there because he's there every other time. I try to remember, I remember actually just this week reminded a friend of mine, you remember that last time? Remember last year you went through this and how hard that was? And she was like, yeah. And I said, this time right now is no different than that. But you got through that, he's gonna get you through this too. And oh, by the way, there's gonna be another windstorm ahead. You ain't seen it yet, but he's gonna get you through that too, because you're his child. Same way I feel about my protection of Lyric. I'm not gonna let anybody do anything. I'm gonna let her learn her lessons on her own, but that's my child. I'm God's child. He's not going to release you and say, oh, that thing you did, that's it, you're done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so his presence is constant.
I do think that the closest thing on earth to that love is a mother's love. I really do. Because it's so unconditional most of the time. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I feel like it's his presence is constant.
Yeah.
Very constant.
What do you think that God calls you to do for you, for yourself, and for other people through your work?
I'm very clear on this, that my purpose in life is to help make somebody else's life better, is to make a difference. The adoption was to make a difference. The work that I'm doing in my role now is to make a difference. Like I really believe that my purpose here on earth, and I really experienced that through the adoption process, but realizing that when I go into a grocery store and a woman says, honey, literally will follow me around and say, I was looking for you. Can you come back and get that thing off the top shelf? She's so tall. So every little thing, I feel like I have my purpose is to be there to make a difference for somebody else and to listen. So, occasionally, God will say things like, oh, you need to give to that charity. Okay, I wasn't planning on doing that. How much supposed to be like, I'm like every little thing, like then like numbers will pop in my head. I was like, okay. And I do that. So I feel like my purpose is very clear that I am in every moment to make a difference. And sometimes those moments are huge, like they're huge boulder to move. And sometimes there's small things in the grocery store. I have an umbrella ministry. And I remember one time seeing a mom and her daughter in Atlanta in the pouring rain. And from that day on, I keep umbrellas cheap. I go to the dollar store and buy cheap. They're cheap, but they're umbrellas. And I buy umbrellas. And I have about 4 or 5 umbrellas in the car. And when I see somebody caught in the rain, now I've realized that Florida, I was giving out too many umbrellas because like it rains, but then it's like sunny the next minute. So it's different environment here. But like that to me is my ministry. My umbrella,
that is something.
Umbrella ministry.
So you just see somebody and just say, here,
they're caught in the rain. Let me tell you, but the number of times I've had to throw umbrellas at people because they're like, what's this woman doing? I mean, I literally at one point remember like I get it handed out the car. And I'm like, hurry up, because I'm in traffic. Take the umbrella. I literally one time just threw the umbrella out. And then I look back at the mirror and they're like, oh, thank you. But like, to me, that's making a difference, right? It's however I can make a difference, big or small. That's a small thing. I feel like I have some things, on the job right now that making a difference, coming here, saying I'm coming here to make a difference. It's hard. It's harder than the umbrella, right? Just going to the store and buying an umbrella or picking something off the shelf for a woman who happens to be, 2 feet shorter than I am.
Yeah.
But my purpose is clear. I hope people around me can get to a place that I have clarity around. This is not about you, Monica. So this is about helping other people in all kinds of ways.
Wow. And as a journalist, can you speak to making a difference as a journalist? I think, especially now, I find that nobody is happy, in terms of the public, like nobody's going to be happy with what I'm doing. I can't please anybody, it seems like, as far as the public goes. And, but I do want to make a difference. That's very important to me. And I think, especially now for people, they want whatever work they're doing, they want it to be meaningful.
And they want have impact.
And not just be for themselves. And so can you speak to that a little bit more?
So, I think you and I both realize that this work is mission work. It's really mission driven. It is public service. People who do these jobs as true journalists, and there's no reward back, and you don't make a lot of money, and you don't, people, I get hate email all the time, and I spent my morning with people who are upset about their subscriptions, and so this is mission work. This is work that we're doing because we recognize we're trying to change lives in a different way, right? By exposing things or introducing people to something they didn't know, or educating people. All of that is a part of the mission of who we are. And so it's very interesting to me that for both of us, right, this is our career path that we've chosen. I probably would be a social worker or a teacher if I weren't a journalist, because I have a high social spirit, right? But I also have we also have this kind of innate ability to break down things and understand them in ways that other people can't. And so that's a gift that we have to hone into. I've never done anything else. I knew I wanted to be a journalist when I was my daughter's age. And I didn't have any journalists in my family, and I didn't know the word was journalist. But I knew that through my words on paper, and through my spoken word, that I could have impact and influence. And for some people, that influence looks different, right? A politician, it looks different. And for an accountant, it looks different. I'm helping with you with your, life savings or whatever. But for us, it is meaningful. It's creating meaningful change through the work that we do. I like to say, I just actually gave somebody this quote: one headline at a time, one story at a time. We're changing lives one story at a time.
Very inspirational. Last question. Would you consider yourself a healer or a seeker?
A healer, for sure.
A healer.
Yeah, definitely a healer. My seeking is to seek out to heal. And that healing, I think, looks different in a lot of ways depending on the circumstances that I'm in. And I do a lot of questioning on myself, and that self-awareness practice is saying, am I hurting myself in trying to heal? Right? I try to also remember, I'm trying now so I just turned 51, and I'm trying to do more awareness about what I need. Because I spend a lot of time in that healing space of trying to be there for other people. But you can't get there if you're not where you need to be. Then you're just, you're pouring from an empty tank. And so I'm trying to now, at a stage in my life, pour more into my own tank, so that I have more to give on the other side of 50, really. Because for a long time, I feel like I've been, even with my daughter, right? I feel like I pour out, but it's coming down to a drained tank. And it took me going through counseling to realize that, my therapist I love her. She's like a friend to me, but she'll say, I have this quote on my wall from Sojourner Truth: "It is the mind that makes the body." And so I'm trying to pour in, keep pouring in so I can keep giving out.
Right.
And so learning to be more gracious to myself, and that healing, I can describe myself as a healer for others, but I'm also realizing that I have to pour that healing into Monica first to keep giving that away.
Right.
So the seeking is interesting. So the seeking probably is me seeking it for me. So on this side, I'm seeking it in order to be the healer that I believe is a part of my purpose.
Have you thought about writing a book, started writing a book? I mean, there's so much wisdom.
No, I know I
must.
don't have the patience. If somebody if I could dictate it to somebody, I'd be like, go for it. But
I raise my hand.
But I just know that the idea of me sitting down, I have that type A personality, right? The idea of like, how much time is it going to take for me to sit down and do? I got to do 10,000 other things. The time I spent doing that. So
that has not.
But
crossed
I love
your
that.
mind?
It hasn't. It's never crossed my mind.
Wow.
Never crossed my mind. But I love, it's interesting because now we have this format, right? We have the format that we're in now, and you can just speak it.
That's the truth. Right.
Right. So if I did it, I would probably do it through like a series of interviews. Like a sit down with myself in this moment, as opposed to, okay, what's my story that I got to get out?
Right.
But this moment's like, if I could, I would have a book. If I could like bring all the conversations I've had with people like this and bring them into one space, I'd be like, oh, that's a good read. But no, I've never thought about that.
Yeah, I
I don't have patience.
Well, I mean, you have so much wisdom to share. I know that's going to come up again. And you're going to say, Adrianne, she
I know, right? Right.
But I really, really appreciate this. I don't know, can people get in touch with you if they're interested in connecting with you in any way, or on social media, or?
It's at mrich1970, but I'll be very honest. When I'm there, it's intentional.
Yeah.
If I'm on Twitter, or same thing, my Instagram's the same, mrich1970. Sometimes I tell people, I'm like, I don't know what you're following, because I just kind of pop in randomly. Even on Facebook, I've tried to learn to kind of pop in and out. But here's what I'll say. If somebody has some desire to talk about adoption or to talk about my journey further, they should reach out to you, and you know how to find me.
Okay, absolutely. That'd be perfect. Well, thank you so much, Monica.
Thank you.
It's been wonderful.
It's been great.
Thank you for joining us. Remember, you can listen to all of our episodes on traditional podcast platforms. In the meantime, let's start healing.